Okay, we are now recording.
Good day, everyone. It's Tim Seldin, President of the Montessori Foundation. With me, Christine Lowry and John Wolf, and I imagine there'll be other people joining us as we get a little bit further in, but I want to welcome you to our weekly Montessori Town Meeting. It's another Friday, and hopefully you're breathing a little easier this week than last week, but we've got to all admit, we are running a marathon here. So let me hand it off to you, John, and you, Christine. We're so glad that you're with us. This is, again, put together by the Montessori Foundation and the International Montessori Council as part of our outreach to the general Montessori community.
Well, thank you, Tim. Well, since this is a town meeting, this is really about what you all want to query about, talk about. So in the spirit of starting with good news first, does anybody have some good news? Whether your school got your funding, or you had a good breakthrough with your parents, or you had a party with your teachers, or what's going well before we get to what you'd like to discuss for all of us to support you. Anybody have some good news?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share. I'm at Pines Montessori School under Patty Sobelman, and we have had incredible leadership, and I think we've also had an incredible support system of staff and parents. And I think the appreciation that we have for our families and the incredible work that the children have been doing throughout this time, and that more than just what they've been doing at home, but just emotionally how they've been, has been pretty phenomenal. We had a poetry reading today. One of our other lower elementary teachers, sorry, I'm in lower L, and one of our other lower L teachers had them work on different poems, and the poems they came up with, so many of them brought tears to our eyes. They were incredible poems about how they were expressing themselves about either COVID or what it means to be shelter in place, or about food they like. I mean, it was just so endless. And we had a poetry reading today with the whole class, and our lower L class has about 40 kids in it. So it was the children and then their parents. And all of them were reading their poems, and there were parents like applauding and putting like different emojis on their screens and all these really cool things. But it was so wonderful because, again, the work of the children and their voices were so alive. And that was what I think it was probably my favorite time doing this virtual thing. So it kind of gave us more momentum to just keep going, because I think we're at the stage of, for the love of God, we hope we never have to do this again. And that was really, really cool to have that today. So it was a really fun poetry reading, one that we will probably always remember.
That's really sweet. So I want to go back to something you said in your very first sentence, David. You said some really good or great leadership, and knowing the kind of leader Patty Sobelman is, could you share with the group, with teachers and any leaders around the line, define the leadership that you're seeing that has made all the difference at Pines?
It's, well, I get emotional even thinking about it, because who she is much more than professional, right? Christine knows this, but my family flooded twice in the past year. We flooded last May, and then we flooded in September. We were in our house for 3 weeks, and we flooded again during Imelda. And the support that Miss Patty gave and the rest of the faculty and parents gave, you just can't put it into words. And so that just opens up a little bit about who she is, right? She's this person that just kind of gives it her all, and she's very self-sacrificial, but not to the detriment of herself. So she's balanced that really well. But during this time, I think that what we needed to hear, so for us where we're in Kingwood, it's a suburb right outside of Houston. This hit right before we left for spring break. we had a huge science fair and it was really fun. It was like, oh, we love our school and everyone loves each other. It was really great. And then and then over spring break was when all this hit. And we were like, what are we going to do? So we kind of had school kind of for like 3 days, but really when we got back from break, but then really quickly we were like, we can't do this anymore. And so what happened was we kind of just rallied together, and Miss Patty came in and we were doing our social distance meeting while we were all still physically on campus. And she was just completely vulnerable. She just said, it was St. Patrick's Day, who is actually, she's a woman of faith. So for her, that's her patron saint. And she just read one of his prayers. And she said, in whatever non-denominational way you're going to do this, this is kind of what I'm going to do to get myself through today. And she was very honest with us about, I don't know how we're going to do this. We're figuring this out. I don't know what we're going to say to our parents. But really pretty much within a 24-hour period, she had a game plan. And we're infants through middle school. So it was really important that we were fairly consistent in what we told our families and what we did in our classrooms and how we figured this out. And so we kind of came back and said, this is what we're going to do. And she doesn't micromanage. She really is just like, okay, I trust you guys. Let's do this for elementary. Let's do this for middle school. Let's do this. And it was really just a collaboration of how can we do this? So I think that her style is collaboration, getting really good people on the same page. The office is run by an incredible group of women that are they know what they're doing. And she trusts them to do what they need to do, and she does what she needs to do. So it's collaboration, it's good teamwork, but it's also a lot of vulnerability and a lot of, I need to be honest, this is what I'm thinking, how else can we do this? And so and financially, she just runs a really good ship. So that also has been very helpful, right? She kind of had her ducks in the row for whatever we needed to do. But then she approached the parents in a very honest way and said, listen, we don't know everyone's situation. And we're a private school, we're a nonprofit. So she said, but this is what we're doing. She's very cool, calm, and collected when she gives a message. And when she delivers bad news, she goes like this, like, yes, it's bad, but you're going to agree to what I'm saying. So it's one of those kinds of things that, and she was communicating with the parents daily. I mean, there were daily notes, there were daily letters. She does a weekly Zoom call and anyone can join from the parent community that wants to come. And she has an agenda of what we're going to talk about, but she leaves it very open-ended. So again, it's that balanced approach to what needs do people have. So during that time, she was very communicative about how we're staying open and what's going on, but bold enough to say, hey, I still expect a tuition. But then for those of you people that are either losing jobs or your finances are tight, just speak to me and I trust you to tell me the honest truth, that you'll pay what you can pay. And she gave parents a lot of choices. You can walk away and you can come back when school's open, or you can pay in full because that's going to help other people that can't pay. And so I think the amount of flexibility and openness she gave to parents made parents feel really good. So we have a campus body of 184, and this was now 2 months, right? Whatever it is. 11 families have walked away, but they're coming back when we come back. So to have that few people leave during this has been pretty awesome. And a lot of people are paying like a 50% because someone lost a job, or why am I paying a full percent for my 3-year-old? Like, why? I mean, yeah, why? So I think that there was a lot of honesty too in that sense. So sorry, that was a long answer to a question.
That was great.
But to me, it really nails some of the key things that a lot of us have been, discussing with school leaders is, how do you stay honest and transparent? Like, we don't know, but we have confidence that we'll get through this as a community. And Patty is so good at being humble and vulnerable and transparent. but also projecting confidence that like, we're going to create a plan together and we will work with you. And that it's that balance between vulnerability and confidence. And I think to me, that's one of the keys that's helped your community really stay in place. So thank you for sharing the case study of good leadership.
Yeah, it helped us as a staff. I think as a staff, we felt really secure, and we all had a vision, a common goal, and that made it much easier to plan. We weren't left just solo to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that made it good.
Thank you,
That's
David.
good. I wonder if there are others of you on the call that would like to share something that you feel great about, or go ahead and jump into what you're hoping to get out of being on the call today, maybe.
It's nice
Lisa? Hi.
Hi. I'm Liza Herzberg from Windmill Montessori School in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know that you get as many people on our side of the world, and I don't know that it's such a big city and nobody really knows anything. Between the governor and the mayor and the Department of Health, they just not knowing. I just sent in my camp papers today because I spoke to the person that's the head of camps, and she's like, well, send it in. Who knows? But who knows? We all know that we're not going to be opening camp. But the wonderful thing that happened was after 5 times of revising the PPP, we finally got our money. So that really, made us feel a lot better, because my bank person told us, oh, nobody got it in a whole bank on the first round. She was happy to tell me that. That didn't make me feel any better. But so that was much better. Normally at this time, since it's Mother's Day coming up on Sunday, we have a Mother's Night. So we're trying to do the virtual mothers. So today, the stepping stones is our 2.5 to 3.5-year-olds. And so they had their mommy's Montessori morning. And it was just so cute. They wanted to talk about their caterpillars that turned into butterflies. And I was invited in because normally I take photos. So I was screen shooting the session of everybody being in there. And then next week, normally it would have been one night, but we'll do each class separately so I can come in and be in each of the meetings. And the junior high school or the upper L are preparing poetry, as you said, and they've been working on little projects that they're kind of putting up on Google Classroom, and parents are printing but not looking, and then we're going to have our meetings. So we're very excited about that. I usually do a French cafe at this point. So we're going to try to do some sort of French cafe as well, where maybe they'll have hot chocolate and they can, we told our French teacher, maybe she can demonstrate how she makes crepes normally. So parents can try. So we're trying to do things that, seem interesting enough to hold on to our parent body as well. So,
Go ahead.
That's such a key, Liza, that whole idea of, everybody can be so over-focused on curriculum that we forget about community. And it's so great that you're focusing in on that. So thank you. Janet, Lisa, Claudia, anything you'd like to share? Kim?
Hi, I'm Kim Sione from Frederick, Maryland, Meadows Montessori. And we serve infants through kindergarten age children. So we're a pretty small school, and we were open just through March 20th. And so then we were doing Zoom chats every day with the children, like a circle time for our toddlers and preschoolers. And then the stay-at-home order happened, and we kind of have been closed and keeping communications with our families, but not really doing a distance learning of any type. So I don't know if there are others here with just sort of like the primary up to the primary age group, or if you guys have middle schools and high schools. I don't know, but I could be in a different position than some of the rest of you here today.
There are a lot of schools like yours, though, Kim. that serve the younger children, and looking at that, how do you maintain community, not just with the families, but with the children, without giving them a lot of curriculum. I mean, you know, we can't do a 3 to 6 classroom over Zoom, really, but you can stay in touch with them. It sounds like you're doing that. What kinds of activities do you do with them on Zoom?
We have songs, story reading, scavenger hunts around their home, show and tell kind of thing. For the toddlers, we did make up and provided for the families like a box of materials that would last for 2 weeks, and each day the lead teacher would sort of partner with the parents as they were with their children in doing whatever that activity was. And so we've dropped materials, you know, simple type of materials off at some of the families' homes. So, you know, the children can be engaged with Montessori-like materials. That's pretty much, and some Spanish. We have a Spanish teacher, and so she did a lot of, Spanish. So we did like a half an hour Zoom meetings, you know, for the 3 to 6 level, and a little bit shorter than that for the toddlers.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure that they appreciate seeing their teachers every day.
Have the parents been appreciative of that, Kim?
Very much.
Yeah. How is teacher energy holding up?
So they found it stressful.
I'm sure.
You know, just to do a half an hour Zoom, they were spending like 3 hours to present
So
just that
intensive.
little time.
Yeah.
So I think it was, you know, I know that they needed to have some self-care as well. So that was another thing to struggle, that I wanted them to have some downtime. And we do have a few teachers that have their own children at home. That makes it very difficult.
Kim, a couple schools that we've been talking with, are not only school leaders are looking for ways to give teachers downtime, but they're also starting to hold some events, just some party events for teachers online.
Yeah.
You know, like a celebration party, like we're going to get together and, you know, we're going to play some games together online. It's sort of just teachers need to let their hair down and sort of vent and play and have fun together. And that can be renewing just for the faculty.
Yeah, you're right. And I did have Zoom meetings for the staff once a week, and, you know, we would just connect with each other and, you know, share some uplifting things mostly. But yeah, I know that the Montessori Foundation is having the farce. May the farce be with you.
Yes,
So,
Andrew Cutt and I are and I can give you a tiny sneak preview. We're going to do some really fun things that we've done at the conferences every year. And we'd love for you to attend. And if you haven't seen this yet, the date will be Friday, the 15th of May at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And it's just going to be some crazy fun time. We're going to play games like, we're going to give everybody a list of very famous people, either fictional heroes or people in history, and we're going to ask people, what would those people have been like in a Montessori classroom? I'll give you one that came up a couple years ago at the IMC conference when we did this live. Somebody suggested Mahatma Gandhi, and the response was, wonderful child, but he spent his entire time at the peace table.
yeah.
So we're going to do that. We're going to do a Montessori Jeopardy game, which will be kind of fun. And then I think Andrew Cutt will do some of his wonderful songs. And I think the other thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little game. We're going to give everybody a list of all the famous Montessori terminologies, like, you know, sensitive period, 3-period lessons, long work times. And we're going to let people imagine that if all of these words had been mistranslated from Italian, what was she really saying? Like a couple of years ago, I think Andrew Cutt came up with, she never spoke about normalization. It was mistranslated. It's normal hydration. Keep the children watered. So it's going to be a pretty crazy time just for Montessorians to let their hair down and have a little fun together. So we'll hope you can join us and tell your friends and colleagues to come and have Montessori crazy time with us. Lisa, how are you? Janet, how are you?
I'm doing a lot of reading. The edict came out from the governor in Maryland. We're in Towson. about going forward. So I have a stack printed from the state, a stack printed on education for the state, a stack printed from the CDC, which is referenced from the state, and a health department stack, which is referenced, and the Montessori public policy thing, which is 2 pages, and all the rest are a stack. So I have that to go through.
How
So
fun.
it's a lot. It's a lot, but none of it other than the size of the pile is daunting right now. And doing the things for take home for the kids has been very grounding. It's like
Okay.
work is to them, and it's been really fun. And I do 2-year-olds now, so figuring out how to do things that we do in the classroom that they can do at home has been really interesting. We did pin pricking with almost like a glasses screwdriver.
Uh-huh.
And that worked. I just wander around the house and see things. I'm like, I wonder what.
For you.
And then I have to remember where I found them. So that part's a little tricky. I have a lot of things misplaced. But it's been interesting. That keeps the rest of it in balance.
Yeah.
The rest of it, all the logistics of it, figuring out how to get disinfectant, all of those, that's daunting. But this part keeps it fun. So that's nice.
Yeah, so you've got your therapy for designing cool things. For the kids, huh?
Yeah,
Exactly.
We're doing it for the children, right? Lisa, are you just gathering information at this point, or are you looking at plan A, B, and C for reopening? How are you approaching that?
The information that came out has a couple conflicts to what's been out so far in terms of who's wearing masks, which initially it was 2 and up, and now it may be 5 and up. So I'm trying to write down the definites, write a column of possibilities, and then just start brainstorming scenarios and possibilities.
I know your governor has closed the public schools for the rest of the school year. Does that impact either you or Kim?
It does not impact us.
Okay.
Right now, they're also looking at bringing them back in January. So I did have 2 parents email yesterday, one first thing in the morning and one later, that one works for the MSDE in the public schools, and both asked me about the January, which we're not compelled to follow, but I told them one of the biggest precipices right now is having the disinfectant that we need to be able to take care of the materials. The logistics we can juggle, paring down the shelves so we have less to disinfect. I mean, there's a lot we can easily accommodate, but that disinfecting piece, having the disinfectant and figuring out how to have a teacher, if it's a 9-to-1 ratio, have a teacher be managing the class and the lessons and constantly disinfecting. That's the trickiest piece, it seems.
Well,
So where are you in Maryland?
We're right at the top of the Baltimore Beltway.
Baltimore.
Actually, we're a little further out, 83. I live right now where I am is right at the top of the Baltimore Beltway. We're out 83 east of Hunt Valley.
Okay.
I think you said something really important, that we've been encouraging leaders, of course, to think about what the children need, what the parents and family need, what the schools need to stay afloat. But we have to be asking, what can teachers do without burning out? How are the teachers going to handle this? Because, you know, some schools are pushing teachers so hard to keep on developing curriculum, that some of these teachers are going to be burned out when it's time to go back to on-campus operations. These people are going to be like skeletons. So I think it's really great leadership on your part. So think about, okay.
It occurred to me a few weeks ago that I am not going to come back refreshed. I am going to come back exhausted. And I love what I'm doing, and I love the time I'm spending, because if I didn't, I would have quit.
Yeah.
But it's a lot to do. It's just a lot to do. I was telling my daughter this morning, my 13-year-old said it's Friday because she loves learning, but this type of learning is really draining for her. And she said, I think I need a 3-day weekend. And I thought I could use a 1-day weekend, because Friday to me is the same as Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, except I don't have to do my class Zooms on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So other than that, they all look alike.
Yeah, it's so intense. Janet Gallo is having some trouble with her audio, so I wanted to read some of the things she's putting in the chat, which you can also see. So Janet writes, We're using the time to do a lot of professional development and making new works. Good for you. Catching up on reading. I hope it's renewing reading and not the kind of stuff that Lisa's having to pour through. We're looking at possibly reopening in June. It will be challenging, but we'll see what's best for the children and us. And then, Hillsborough County said that we will have to do a lot of disinfecting. So, Janet, where are you? Where is Hillsborough County? Where is that, Janet? You could type that in. I don't know what state that's in. Oh, you're near. Oh, okay, in the Tampa area.
Oh.
Okay, good.
There are a lot of Hillsboroughs in this country.
Yeah, Claudia, what's going on with you and Doug?
Well, I'm here because I have been trying to do little bits of support in various places. So I would say in my capacity as CGMS person, I'm getting ready to be part of a town meeting for upper elementary teachers, and probably their concerns won't be the same as some of my personal concerns for the primary teachers, but it's about how are they going to manage going back. And so I came today just to listen and hear what people are up against, because I'm not in the classroom. This isolation hasn't been very different for me from our life all the time, except that I don't just run out to the store when I need something. And so I just really can't even talk about that part, because it's so much different I'm so grateful for how it's different for us. I guess that first, I also want to respond to things that I've heard. First, Gandhi absolutely would not be at the table. He would be walking, because he walked constantly to go places and do things. So I think he'd be one of those kids that was wandering all the time, as well as he would not be eating, because that was his way of protesting. So if he was upset about anything, he'd never eat. So I think he'd be very different than just sitting at the peace table. I just finished a biography. That's why I think that. Anyway, and then I just want David to say hello to Patty. I was fortunate enough to be on an accreditation team with her, and I just enjoy getting to know her, and she's every bit as wonderful as you described her. So please say hello for me, and best wishes to her and your school.
And from me.
Her daughter also graduated last week from college, so.
Oh, wow.
And she's moving, she's getting a new job, so they have to move her in June. So I will let her know that you said hello.
Yeah, tell her my heart is with her in all aspects, managing the school, saying goodbye to her daughter, for sure. I think that what I've been concerned about, I have a connection with a woman who used to work for me at the school that we had in Colorado. And the school where she's working now, she's subsequently become a trained Montessori teacher, and she's in a job in Montana right now. And it's in a small town where they haven't had tons of the COVID infections, but she's still nervous, and she has two small children, and her heads of school, both of whom I know, are not, at least through the stories that I'm getting, and of course this is all about third hand, but it sounds like they're coming back to work from a very fearful perspective. And so I have a couple of worries or concerns that I'd love to hear what other people think. One is, for the employee who doesn't feel safe going back, what do you need to hear from your administrators to ease that fear? Because what this former teacher of mine is hearing is not helping. And in fact, it's pushed her and other colleagues so far that they've all quit. And so now that's probably, I mean, I'm assuming, but I can imagine that the fear on the part of the heads of school is that they need to get the money coming back in. And so they need, in order to stay alive, they need people to come back and work. But now they're going to have the opposite problem. They won't have teachers that are loved and who've been trying to care for these children from remotely, because they're afraid to come back, and they've been pushed to the limit of, you either come back or you quit. And And so I'd really love to hear what other people think about that and how to support. And also then this week with the meetings that we're about to have through the CGMS team, just what would be your thoughts on what you personally feel like you need to go back to the classroom in a safe way? So, because I'm going to be hearing from teachers that are mostly upper elementary teachers. And so I'm just here to listen and learn. So I'm going to turn off my sound and just listen and learn.
You know, Claudia, I'm a little dumbfounded, and I don't want to be judgmental because I'm not walking in the shoes of those administrators, but why administrators wouldn't make a connection. We have to make teachers feel physically, medically safe, emotionally safe, to have them feel comfortable in their work environment. Why they didn't do a little research and say, this is what the state is recommending. These are the accommodations we're going to put in place for you to make sure that you are safe and the children are safe and your family is safe. So we're going to create a safe environment based on the guidelines of the state or the CDC. It's like, I get that they were probably hysterical to get tuition coming back in and they wanted to get school going again, but they're forgetting the key component. We know that Montessori works. Who makes it work? It's teachers. And if you don't have teachers who are on board and energized and confident and comfortable, you're going to lose everything. So it's like they skipped a step in their own anxiety. I don't know. What are other people's thoughts?
It's even more complicated than that, because it seemed, I don't like to judge either. To me, because I've thought this through from my perspective, and I've had this conversation with my husband because he's still working and I don't love the way his workplace is handling all of this. And I am very careful, having been in Montessori forever, and very precise, and believe in strong communication and following guidelines and doing best practice. And they don't seem to have that same love of things that I do. So we've had this conversation, and, you know, we have gotten its impact on us settled. But from the very beginning, I had two things. I have two staff who are in, one of them has a health condition that makes her much more susceptible, and the other has a child with asthma that it makes her in a different position. And before we walked out of the school building, I told them, first of all, they'd get paid for whatever time we were out, which we had no idea. And second of all, if anyone was uncomfortable coming back, we would figure it out. Do not come back if you're uncomfortable. But the conversation my husband and I had from the very beginning was, I'm not going to be part of this problem. So yeah, I would like money coming back in, and I would like to get rolling again, but not if it's going to mean everything shutting down, because that possible impact is much more concerning to me than getting tuition coming back in. My biggest fear, my most daunting thing, is when it comes back around. I think we'll be in the position to handle it, but it seems like it's going to come back around. So I would so not want to open too early.
You really raised the question that's the national issue right now. Is it really about restarting the economy and coming back prematurely, or is it about saving lives? What's the priority? I want to read again what Janet has put in here, Janet Gallo, because she's not able to get onto the audio, just for your edification. Teachers want to hear that they will be allowed to wear masks and gloves if they are worried. I too feel that way. Our school has bought masks and gloves and thermometers, and the teachers have been told that if they are not comfortable, they can choose not to come back. It's exactly what you just raised, Lisa.
Right. I do think that part of the confusion and the sort of the seeds of fear, if you will, is that the information that's coming out changes almost day to day. So Lisa has multiple stacks of conflicting information, and somehow she's got to figure out, how do I make sense of this? And I do know in particular in Montana that the first public school in the United States opened, I believe, yesterday in Montana. And so I wonder if there was a sense of, oh, they're opening, we've got to open too. And in that hurry to do that, they maybe didn't think it through in the best way that they could have. But it's such a moving target that it's difficult for everybody, difficult for teachers, difficult for school leaders to know exactly what to do.
Well, you know, you're bringing up a kind of a spiritual preparation point in my mind, Christine, which is as a former school leader or a teacher, is asking myself, am I making a decision out of fear?
Right.
Or am I making a decision out of what's best for people and the school? And what's the priority? Of course, we want to save the school, but we don't ever want to put people at risk. Am I coming from a place of values and reflection, or am I reacting fearfully, which is just not in this age, you know, good decision making. So.
Yeah. David, did you want
that
to?
one of the, oh,
David
was just
wrote
gonna
something in the chat box, but
Oh no, I was just sharing the I don't know if you guys have all gotten like the white paper. It's been distributed throughout. Tim's nodding, it's Claudia, and yeah, it's basically saying like this is what could happen for schools in the future and all that. But every state's we have to plan accordingly, right? But at the same time, the state's gonna say, hey, you need to do this, and that will help you, right? But that's the tricky end too, is as the state's reopening, right, we're in Texas, so they've already been opening and parents have already started having to go back and their employers aren't understanding that they have children. So as a school, we also have to look at, now we have parents going back to work, but there's no childcare for their children. And so that's so we're looking at if reopening happens sooner than later. We're not sure what that's gonna be, but we have to be, I think, open. Self-care is huge, and that's been a huge mantra of ours, has been, and that's exactly what Patty said. She said, take care of yourselves, because this is going to be, we're going to be in this for the long run, and we can't have you burned out. So self-care has been huge for us, but also the reality is we might have to look at next year or whenever as different. Our expectations have to be, we have to be willing to alter our expectations of what does school look like, right? What does the classroom look like? What does, because the protocols are going to dictate that, right? So do we rotate children in and outside all day? Do we have some kids half day, whole? I mean, how does that work, right? So I think to be willing to be open to yourself and to be flexible is also going to be a huge shift, right? And that the epidemic of fear, I think, is going to be the next thing that we're starting to face and see.
Well, you know,
right.
Dave, and the step after, are we open and are we dealing with our fears, is what Dr. John Moncure and Dr. Val Weiss and Michael Bourne in one of their recent, and I think they're going to do another group next week on contingency planning. It's like, if the government, if this is what's going to happen and we have to go back into isolation, we're going to put this plan into effect. If this is what happens, so getting out in front of the wave is not only good planning to look at all the different scenarios and look at the trigger points. If this is what occurs with the virus or the curve of the virus, or this is what the government says, we're going to go to this plan. That not only is good leadership thinking, but it brings everybody's stress level down. It's like there's a plan of action. It's not just wait and see. It's not passive.
I think one of the things with what David said that I've been thinking a lot about is the different way this new normal is going to impact the parents, because as much as we are there while they work, it's got to be a much stronger, if your child is showing symptoms of being sick, don't send them. And how to put that message forth, because I'm sure we've all had families that like to play in the gray area. I mean, we don't have a lot of families who completely cross the line, but we do have a lot of families that like to play in the gray area. And they're usually the ones who say, I don't know why that child's coming with a runny nose. That child should be home. But at any rate, I think having the parents understand that kids cannot come under these conditions, even if you need to work, I think that's going to be a reality for employers, and I think it's going to be a reality for parents, and I don't really think there's a way around it responsibly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Kim.
And how that's going to translate into the tuition, right? And how to handle that whole thing. That's a huge unknown.
It is. It is.
Any idea what other schools' contingency plans in that regard?
People are all over the board, Kim.
Yeah.
We're going to we're going to prorate tuition for every day we're closed, to we're going to discount it, to, you know, our school costs this much to run. Our tuition is one child share. You want to be part of our community, it's for a year. And we don't want to ever close, but if we have to, you go along for the ride. There's no one right answer. The key that John was saying is contingency planning and trying to operate not from fear, but from confidence that your school needs to exist, that you need to know that you can afford to pay your teachers. Everything you know, it's really all about relationship.
Christine, were you going to mention?
There are parents that look and make them happy, they're going to stay. You're going to shake those people away very quickly.
Right.
So what you really need to do is look.
Tim is having his internet worked on, and that's why it's so spotty that he's going in and out. And just
relationship that comes as clear as possible to a community of people who, I'll hush up.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
You're breaking up a lot, Tim.
Christine, you were going to mention.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, I just want to echo what Tim was saying. You know, part of what's so difficult about this is the uncertainty, and you know, and we try to think in one direction, then we try to think in another direction, and then we have yet a third direction, and then you factor in each family being an individual family and having individual needs, and how do we as school leaders respond to the needs of families in a place where we're not feeling fearful to increase their fear level and have some empathy. And it's a lot to balance at one time.
Claudia?
I also wonder if anybody's experiencing much influence of the folks who think that this is really inappropriate to be keeping us at our homes. I know from my former community, because I've stayed connected through Facebook and some other social media, not personally, but social media, there's a number of people who were in my school who are pretty strongly opposed to being isolated. And I think that in the spirit of listening and hearing all concerns, we have to have some way to deal with that, even if we don't agree with it, and even if we aren't going to operate out of that place. We have to find a way to get along by including those folks and their voice in the conversation. And I'm wondering if anybody's had any situation with that.
Yeah, that's a big one.
We haven't heard it directly. It is something, again, I've seen in circles around me as I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on and how people are feeling about it. I think one of the things that's most grounding, now I forgot your name in Frederick. I wrote it down.
Kim.
Okay, I wrote down my aunt's out in Frederick. Anyway, Kim, one of the things I found most grounding, which took a lot at the beginning of this, because things would change so fast, I couldn't draft an email, and there had been the governor talking, the president talking, and I needed to start again. And I did that one time, 3 times in a row, and there was still news, and I just said, I'm not doing this again. I'm just going to hit send, and when they ask, I'll say, it was before the news. So anyway, once I could gather information, take care of all the school pieces first, and the teachers first. It took me a little longer to get to my classroom, but there too. And I was still in contact with the parents of the classroom who were the ones managing the day-to-day. And then once I figured out what we had to offer and how to present it, that it wasn't the parents' responsibility, it was simply optional. This is what we can give you. Do with it what you choose in whatever way works for your family. And we started a private Facebook group that we put lessons on, and we send home the weekly things. that made me feel better, because once I could assess what we're providing, because initially I do not like falling short of my responsibilities at all. So when it felt like I was falling short, it was driving me bananas. But once I got things in play and could assess what was going on and how it was functioning, that made me feel much better. And that made it much easier to look at the picture and say, okay, now I can look at how are we meeting our responsibilities? What about the tuition? And if this happens again, am I confident that we can hold our own? And can I make not the argument, but can I make my position strongly enough and clear enough to the parents that they understand at least where I stand? I can't decide where they stand,
Yeah.
but I can convey where I stand, and that's the best I can do. And I'm comfortable with that.
Well, Lisa, I really like your leadership thinking, because you're prioritizing. It's like, let's take care of ourselves. Let's take care of our community. Let's think about the people issues and then get to the technical part of it. So I commend you for that. David wrote a really powerful thing here in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. When school becomes more than a product, this is so beautifully said, David, but becomes part of your family, that means something to parents, and they will want to help keep the school going.
Yeah.
One of the mantras I've been using recently is, through building community with the parents, through building community so the children can continue to see each other, by building community with the teachers, make the school indispensable to your families. So they're really feeling, we can't get through this period without the support of the teachers and the school. And those families are going to be more open to being flexible about and working with schools and tuition, because the school has really supported them emotionally, socially, and educationally during this time. So it's as Lisa said, it's moving it out of just the technical fixes back to what's important to people. People need to feel they have a sense of belonging, they're cared for, we're thinking about them, we want to make it a win-win, a partnership where this is not about policy and mandates, this is about we're going to work together to solve this problem. So I love what Lisa said and what David said about community.
David?
And I think that back to like Claudia's point of we obviously have a lot of different opinions out there. We have a lot of feelings that are very raw, but to those people, as much as I'm going to disagree with a lot of things, but they are entitled to their opinions just as much as I am. And so I think I'm just reminded of love is the most potent, right? I think that because when we really love someone, we're going to love, I don't just hang out with like-minded people, because it's very easy for me to love like-minded people, but people that have differing feelings and views and opinions, it's a lot harder to love those people. And so I think that in a school community, we have a really diverse, for the most part, you probably have a lot of diverse opinions. And so what I think that as a school, back to that aspect of community, when the message is love and it's just that simple, then I think that there can be enough room to come to the table, because we can feel safe coming when love is the message, right? Like, regardless of what you think about reopening or what, I'm not going to say anything about our president, sorry, but I just think that I just think that regardless of what your opinions are, we have to be supportive and we have to be willing to have those conversations, right? So as a school, if you're not comfortable leaving, or you want to leave and you think you're being bogged down by the man, then let's talk about that. Let's discuss that, and let's really have this kind of open conversation. So whatever love looks like for your campus, I think that's another thing, right? We definitely have to we have to balance the academic, but the spiritual emphasis, I think the amount of opportunity to educate parents and what the spiritual dynamic of what we do is. This is a huge opportunity to talk about that, because you're right when you're talking about community, Jonathan. It's for the children, this is so much more than the academics. It's been so apparent that for the children, this is their family, this is their community, this is the people that they miss. There's a much deeper aspect here that hopefully we're paying attention to. And I think that that's one of the things that have to be at the forefront when we have these conversations about opening or not opening, or opening too soon, or sheltering in place for a year, whatever it is, you know. And so I think that when we bring parents back to that picture, they want your school to succeed. They know that the teachers have livelihoods and they need that, right? They'll do what they can do.
Right.
I think,
Janet has just piggybacked really nicely on what you said there, David. She writes, "This week has been heartwarming to see how supportive some of our parents have been to us. And it has been because we have a good connection with them." I agree with David. It is about community. Christine?
absolutely. And I wanted to go back to something that Claudia said right at the beginning, which is that, Claudia, you expect to hear one thing from upper elementary teachers, but it's an entirely different thing for primary teachers. And one of my concerns with the increased talk about reopening and how are we going to do this and what's it going to look like and all of that is that we as Montessorians keep the children at the center of that. And are we doing the best we can to meet the children's developmental needs and that spiritual piece that we do so well, and do that in the light of compliance, but to keep the children first.
You're here. You're here. We have thank you, Christine. We have just about 8-9 minutes left. Is there any other areas or issues or sharings that people would like to delve into? Something on your mind that you'd like to talk about, we can support you in. Or other aspects of this conversation. Claudia.
I think in response to what you said just then, Christine, that one of the things that struck me from early time when we first started this, and I'm reading lots of communications and stuff from folks, I found a number of teachers that were on the various threads that I was on were fearful of engaging the parents too much. And I watched that soften in terms of I said from the very beginning, and in fact, I kind of got a hand in my face when I said it, but I said, partner with the parents more. Ask them what they see with their children. Help this be a time for them to observe and give you their assessment of what they see their child is ready for, or who their children are. And somebody that was on the thread said, "Oh, no, I would never ask the parents for that." I think they misunderstood. You know, they thought I was asking them to assess their child's development in math or something, that missed the point. But I think I've seen that soften as we've gone on. I think more that we could not teach, but just invite the parents to partner with us as observers, partner with us as people who really know their child, but maybe we can help them know their child in a new way, in a way that they've not had the opportunity because they've kind of put that on the teacher's responsibility or the school's responsibility. So I think that likewise, if we can get the parents engaged, and David, I think you're the only elementary person on here, but you know, I was always older kids anyway, so I guess I'm thinking that way. But those older kids need it too. Yes. They need it, and I think actually the high school kids probably need it more. I'm thinking of, you know, what they're struggling with, where they're so social and leading into an adult level of social beingness. And so I think that's another thing we could support with these teachers as they're trying to figure out how to come back to maintaining a connection with the parents that maybe and the parents with their own children in that partnership way that we didn't have before, something that could be new.
I think we're going to have to do that, because if this comes back around, if we have to do alternate schedules, which are being floated, or when this comes back around, we need that connection. We need to be able to say if they're alternating schedules, and here's what can be done at home or is optional at home. But I think it does transform the whole relationship, because it has to.
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
Under normal times, as a teacher educator and now a consultant and a former head of school, I always had a real issue with, it's not all about follow the child, it's how about follow the family. You know, Montessori teachers need to learn, even in pre-service education in their training, if you want to understand the whole child, you have to understand the whole family and build a bond with that family to get a full picture of the child. And if you want the family support at home from a Montessori
Oh, yeah.
parenting standpoint, you better build these bridges. So this situation that we're in now has forced us into that role. And I hope we learn with that. And as Claudia said, I hope we continue with that paradigm that as a Montessori teacher, your job is to understand the whole family as much as the whole child.
I
That's
agree.
funny.
And this,
One of the things I say most about my pediatrician was I have 4 kids between 12 and 17 now. My son turned 12 Tuesday. So one of the things he told me ages ago, because they're all very different, and he said I was, having the parent, what's the best thing? I have so many pieces I'm trying to factor what's best. And he said, you know what? Sometimes you do what's best for you. Sometimes you do how you can manage it best, but you always do what's best for the family. And if you do what's best for the family, that's always the right thing. And I share that with parents all the time, because that was such a relief. It was just such a relief.
Well said.
yeah. We've got about 3 more minutes, just
Yeah, let's see.
as a little time check here.
Janet writes, my sister and I are both Montessori teachers, and that is our approach, to connect with the families and encourage them. Well, I commend you, Janet. I think that's going to be one of our big opportunities now, is to build a tighter homeschool relationship and have teachers get better at inviting families into those conversations. So.
And I love that you said partnering with parents, Claudia, because I really think that that's what it's about. And in the broader world of early childhood education, where I am now a graduate student, this talk of parents are the experts about their children, and we are experts on educating children. But there's a lot that we can learn from families. And so that idea of really collaborating in a very partnership way is really the crux of it. So I'm so glad that you used that term. Thank you.
I'd love to ask the question, Christine, of teachers who are not on that bandwidth yet. It's like, do you think your parents, it's a rhetorical question, do you think your parents understand certain things about their children that you don't know yet? And people always go, oh yeah, I guess so. Well, then do you invite that to get a better understanding? Or do you sort of go, that's just the parents, they're the parents,
Yeah.
All right, well.
Any last thoughts before we wind up for today?
Have a good weekend, and thanks.
Well, thank you. Thanks for taking your time to share your ideas.
I love this. You guys are great.
Well,
happy Mother's Day.
Yes, happy Mother's Day. And again,
to all of us, mothers.
Thank you for your dedicated work to your parents, children in your schools, and we will get through this. Stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.